Okay, now we come to our featured reader, Sean M Whelan, and the reason why we've all been giving out middle initial is in tribute to Sean M Whelan, who is an award-winning slam poet, spoken word performer, playwright and DJ. He was convener of the famous Melbourne Open Mic Night Babble and co-inventor and creator of the popular liner notes gigs, where people had to write...
in response to classic album tracks.
Such as Nick Cave, Leonard Cohen...
Doing Ziggy Stardust at the Byron Bay Writers Festival last night.
Okay, lovely. Sean has had 2 books published. His first one was published by Hit and Miss in 2003 called Love is the New Hate. And the second one was Tattooing the Surface of the Moon by Small Change Press in 2008. He's a hard-working poet who has performed extensively around Australia, and in 2009 he toured North America, where he taught them how to build stadiums for the World Cup. Along with Alicia Sometimes and Emily Zoe Baker, he was one of the co-writers and performers of Elemental at the Melbourne Planetarium, which held a sold-out season at the Melbourne International Arts Festival a few years ago, and has been running in Melbourne venues this week.
Yes.
And next Friday will be in James' hometown of Bendigo. So if you're not doing anything next Friday, go along to the...
It's sold out.
Stand outside.
You can just stand outside and throw money at Sean as he comes past. So Sean writes pieces which are warm, ironic and bittersweet. His metaphors sing when they cry out for love or a place to call home. This afternoon, Brooke Russell will accompany him on a few songs, so please make way for Sean M Whelan.
Thank you, Myron. That was a wonderful introduction. Yes, Myron mentioned Elemental, which has been amazing. We've just had our return season these last couple of days in Melbourne. We did 4 shows at the Melbourne Planetarium. They all sold out. We had over 600 people come along to support poetry about the stars, which was amazing to have that sort of response. So I'm gonna start with my opening poem for that particular show, and it's about the origins of the universe. In the beginning, there was a beginning, and it's been going ever since. Our universe is old, like really, really ridiculously old. Some scientists think it might be even older than Keith Richards. But nobody has ever really proven that. We are born, we are babies, we learn how to cry immediately. This is good practice for the future. We learn how to cry before we even know what a broken heart is. Eventually, we get struck down by love. And then we do know what a broken heart is. But we still spend the rest of our lives chasing after lightning. If we're lucky, we get old, just like the universe. And we age and age and age until we disappear back into the stars. We rinse and repeat. And we do all this while clinging tenaciously to a spinning blue ball in space. In between are stories. Now, you can't start a story without a beginning, and what better way to start than with a really big bang. Thank you. I'm going to do a poem called They Don't Love Blue. This is like a break-up Valentine. Tell me where to stand in the garden, and I'll mark the spot. You'll find me there every evening at dusk, watching the day transmogrify, just like we did. Tell me where the light falls the best upon my face. I want to be just as handsome as you are, supernatural. Just because I don't believe in permanence doesn't mean I want to forget this. I want to build a theme park to us in the mountains of my mind, travel there every lonely hour and take all the rides. Tell me where to stand in the garden, where nobody will see us, not even Lou Reed's satellites. Tell me this shit is real or unreal. That works too. Show me a species of bird that migrates from Melbourne to Manhattan every year and I'll tie a love letter around its ankle. Tell me, do birds even have ankles? Tell me how somebody so old could still be learning about birds. And by that I mean actual birds. But the other way works too. Tell me how you know so much stuff. I only want this love to have its own Wikipedia entry. I only want the New York Times to tell me we're getting married. I only want to be more famous than your dresses. I only want to live long enough to know how to die right. Let's synchronise our watches so that we break up at the same time. And then let's drown our watches in the kitchen sink in sync so that we never break up. I know, we broke up. But for the purpose of this poem, let's pretend that we didn't. Or let's write up a post-breakup agreement with plenty of day passes. And then let's swap shadows so I can still watch your determined walk all the time. Tell me where to stand in the garden. Light has the highest concentration of magic at dusk. Fact. We can dig in here forever. We can learn how to grow. Tell me where the soil is the softest, where the underworld will receive us the quickest. I have the best of friends in low places. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that the love letter I wrote you was eaten by the sky. How could I know the future could eat so much? Tarkovsky wrote poems with a camera. He knew about us. He knew we would break up. He knew we didn't need to worry about this. And he was right. So when those doe-eyed, bearded Boy Scouts come at you with a pocket full of sad song mixtapes, as they surely will, then wait and remember, they don't love blue like I do. Now I'd like to call your new favourite singer to the stage, Brooke Russell. This is a poem I wrote about an American singer-songwriter called Elliott Smith. Now, I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with him, but he was quite amazing, and I guess I'd describe him as a cross between the Beach Boys and the Beatles. But in the early 2000, he tragically took his own life through the rather dramatic method of stabbing himself in the heart. And I was moved to write this poem about him. It's called Dear Elliott. Elliott Smith, you stabbed yourself in the heart today. I heard the moan, the sharp exhale of breath, and because a sound that big can't just be contained in the now, it echoed far into the future and the past. This gave me time to catch the first flight to Los Angeles. At LAX airport, I bribed a baggage handler for your address. He couldn't speak because every time he opened his mouth, birds flew out. This only happens, he wrote on my arm, when I wake up needing nothing. And he wrote your address there too, with feathers poking from the corners of his mouth. As I was running up your street, I heard you moan again, and I knew this was a repeat. I stood outside your house with your dress dripping down my arm, and I watched the sound of dying ripple out of the building in waves, flowing forward to the past and back to the future. At the foot of your bed, I tried to remind myself that crying near the dying is like placing their leaking little rowboat into a raging storm. So I started singing one of your songs instead, until you suddenly sat up and told me to shut the hell up, because listening to me sing was just like dying all over again. So I sat on the bed feeling awkward, looking everywhere else in the room except at the knife. You said, "Do me a favour, will you? I don't need this anymore." And you looked down towards your chest. I withdrew the knife like some kind of indie rock Excalibur. I stared at the blade, and in the blood still clinging, I saw hundreds of tiny letters swimming around, like an alphabet tomato soup. "What are these?" I asked. "Unwritten songs," you told me. "They'll fade away soon, they hate the light. I did too until I died, and now light is all there is." And you flung your hand forward as if the room was full of it, as if the room was all there is. "But I called a plane to stop you," I said. "Why?" you asked. "Because every time I listen to you sing, all the walls in my house become transparent." You laughed and said, "That's why I'm here." And you trying to stop it is like stabbing a river to stop it from flooding. And then you opened your mouth and you began to sing. All the walls turned transparent. So I saw your girlfriend opening up the bedroom door before she arrived. She entered the room, the film ran backwards, the knife returned to your chest. I opened my mouth and the room filled with birds. This is a poem I wrote called 3 Days Away. Do you start this? Day 1. I didn't think I could get away from you so quickly. It's only been 23 hours and 36 minutes, but now I can't drink the water or speak the language, and nobody in this city knows your name. Passenger jets are like that big guy at a party who splits up two people in a fight. I got on a plane, I fell asleep, and when I woke up, the plane had done all my thinking for me. I tried to watch the movie, but all the female characters look like you, and all the male characters look like your dad. Now I'm in another airport, and it looks exactly like the last one. You must be in one of these bathrooms somewhere, still throwing up, still shouting at me through the door to just get on the fucking plane already. Day 2. I woke up and I thought I was in jail again. I could have gotten a cheaper room if I hadn't demanded one of those fancy ones with a bed. When I left the airport yesterday, I half expected to walk back into Melbourne. Not the old Melbourne, but another version, where I only liked drugs half as much, and you had a whole garage full of patience stockpiled for a rainy day like me. Instead, I stood on the curb while 4 cab drivers circled me like buzzards, shouting at me in Spanish. You'd be proud to know I didn't cry.
Falling asleep while I'm waking up. 3 days away and I'm making up ways to forget you. Walking through streets unfamiliar, too far from that hole where you stood in the doorway. Your hat
Day 3. Even walking seems harder here and you're nowhere to lean on. Today when I was standing in the park wondering where all the grass was, I thought about how the planet is always spinning around. It does that, right? I figured if I could jump up in the air and stay up there long enough, like in those Jackie Chan films you loved, you know? If I could stay up in the air long enough, then when I landed on the ground again, if I had my timing just right, then maybe I'd land back on Australia, and maybe I'd land right next to you. That would give you a shock, wouldn't it, baby? I reckon it would. I'll do that. This is the title poem from my book called Tattooing the Surface of the Moon. In his fingers there are rooms where his impulses live. Every time she passes, the lights in his digits come on one by one. She loves the way his pockets light up on the couch when he tries to hide them. Last week she decided to become a democratically elected leader of her own self-control. She made out how to vote card nominating herself in all the preferences, and she constructed a voting booth out of old egg cartons. When he tried to vote, she pointed to her heart and she said, "I'm sorry, but you're not enrolled in this district." He declared the election a sham and told her her self-control was being ruled by a puppet dictator. He thought of hurling eggs at her crappy homemade voting booth, but since it was made from egg cartons, this seemed too weirdly ironic. In his fingers there are rooms where his impulses live, a ghetto of desire where snow falls in the form of glitter-dipped eyelashes. They drink together like sailors. They sail empty streets like drinkers. They buy temporary tattoos from 24-hour supermarkets, and they wake up drooling with Pokemon characters smudged across their bodies. They always wake alone. She tells him he's a bad vitamin for her, but he doesn't know that whenever she leaves the house, the ghost of his embrace is always the last thing she puts on. In his fingers there are rooms where his impulses live. His impulses are stargazers, and anything can be a star. He spits on his palm and he presses a miniature Spider-Man tattoo upon the curve of her back. She lets her head fall back into his shoulder and she tells him, "You know, we could be lovers if we didn't understand each other so fucking well." And then she whispers into his ear, "Do you think this life belongs to us or to somebody else? Lately I've been feeling like a character invented by a performance poet." He whispers back and says, "Don't worry about it. It won't last much longer than 2 or 3 minutes, and chances are nobody's paying attention anyway." In his fingers there are rooms where his impulses live. They crowd the windows of his knuckles to watch him apply temporary tattoos to the surface of the moon.